Welcome back to the podcast review, the podcast where we deep dive into the world of self help and personal development by reviewing well known podcasts. I am Cyrielle.
And I am Marie-Elise, and today we would like to share with you our favorite podcast of May. So this is our second PODCRUSH episode where we will share 4 podcasts that we have listened this month and that we really think you should listen to as well.
So we started PODCRUSH 2 months ago, and the idea is to give you the best of the podcast that we listened to last month, and we are still tackling one self-help topic every month, of course, but this is a novelty, and the feedback of the first PODCRUSH episode was really good, so we decided to keep going.
Before we dive in, we would like to remind you that we are not medical experts nor psychologists. So we are just two very passionate people, and we would just want to discuss and share with you our thoughts about all these self-help topics.
I suggest, Marie-Elise, if that's okay for you, that we deep dive into the first episode that I chose that was released in May. So this is an episode from the podcast 10% Happier. It's a very famous podcast, and it's by Dan Harris. Dan Harris is a retired journalist from ABC, if I'm not mistaken, and he has interviewed people like the Dalai Lama and Brené Brown in his podcasts, among others. And this time he interviews Thomas Curran. Thomas is the author of the book, The Perfection Trap, Embracing the Power of Good Enough. He's a professor in the Department of Psychological and Behavioral Sciences at the London School of Economics. And we are going to start by a little preview of 30 seconds of this podcast.
Perfectionism, I think you have to start with perfectionism, and it's very root. And its very root is a sense of deficit, a sense of lack, a sense that we really don't feel like we're good enough. And as a consequence, our whole existence really is to trying to prove to other people and all around us that we're not flawed, that we're hyper-functional, that we're competent, that we have skills and abilities, and that we matter essentially in the world. And so perfectionism is, yes, high standard.
So of course we'll link everything in the description of the episodes. Thomas Curran used to define himself as a perfectionist, and in this podcast and in his book, they are debugging a little bit what perfectionism is and explaining basically why it's not a good thing to define ourselves as perfectionists, because we are humans after all, by essence imperfect. And he says that perfectionism is a way to cope with some issues like imposter syndrome, like the feeling of not being enough or not feeling enough, the fear of others' opinions. He tackles also the question of gender. Are women more perfectionist than men, or the other way around? He explained how the imposter syndrome is actually triggering perfectionism, and he really puts back perfectionism in our society, in the context of our society, how it's actually the consequence of our profit culture, that we always want more, we want to do more, we want to create more. At the end, they also give some tips and tricks to combat perfectionism, and they end with a word on parenting. So parenting as a cured perfectionist. My key takeaway really was when they tackled psychological safety, because of course it's very much linked. It's important to be able to say, I don't know, to be able to fail and to learn from it. So to admit basically that you are imperfect, and that it's actually a good thing. So psychological safety, it's key in understanding why perfectionism is not doing us favor, let's say. That was it a little bit. What does it trigger within you, Marie-Elise? Do you consider yourself as a perfectionist?
Not at all. Actually, not at all. I know it's super valued in society to be one, but I actually never felt like one, and I'm not one. I'm not the type of person that's really looking to, like, how to say, because it's difficult also to say that you're the contrary, because then it means that you don't do things well. It's not it. I like things to be done. And even if they're not perfect, at one point, I just get bored with checking and verifying, then I prefer it's done. And then I correct it afterwards if there are any corrections to be done, which can be also sometimes a default because I'm maybe too quick in doing things. But even when I was at school and doing, having exams, I would recheck my paper once, twice, thrice, and then I was like, okay, you know what I could have done, and I would just give it back even if I have the time, because I think I just get bored with it. So I've never identified as one, but I feel everybody does. So I feel I should not say I'm not one. So I just avoid, if I can avoid speaking about it, but just, put in for it other things that I can do. But yeah, I actually never identified as one, but I see a lot of people that do. So
But
yeah.
it's
And
interesting
you?
because
Do you?
I, I have the same feeling everyone does, and I don't know about you, but I feel like it's even something that's considered positive, at least in the episodes.
Yeah,
That's
for
how they
sure.
tackled it, like, oh, he's such a perfectionist. But actually, it's really not a great thing. So we shouldn't feel like we should be perfectionist. We should be hard worker and having the feeling of, okay, what I submit is great,
Mm-hmm.
but it's never going to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm a little bit like you. I'm someone that's also sometimes impatient. So checking her
Yeah.
100 times the same paper or the same presentation, it it really annoys me. Like I need to, or to give it a good night's rest and get back at it the day
Exactly.
after.
Mm.
But yeah, I would never spend countless hours on something that doesn't feel important to me. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think
and
it's
exactly.
indeed something that's too present. Sorry, in
Mm-hmm.
our work life, at least in our
Mm-hmm.
society. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. But I think maybe, we have just our methods. Like we're taking something like for an hour, not a good idea for us. But as you're saying, leaving it for one night rest, this is actually something that I always try to do, whatever I do. It is okay. I've done what I could today. Let's recheck that tomorrow morning. But not being on it like 5, 6 hours and then you just get tired and even you're not working well in the end.
Yeah.
So I didn't think you were like this. So I'm happy to hear I'm not by myself.
Yeah, I don't want to be the annoying colleague that is going to check the same presentation for hours and never be happy with it. So trying to
Mm,
to limit myself to good enough, just like they say in the podcast, actually, the power of good enough. And in French, we
mm,
have a
mm.
saying that says the better is the enemy of goods. Always trying to do better, actually, you're just gonna ruin it. All right, but this podcast is really nice. 10% happier. I
Mm-hmm,
think it's the first time we talk about it, but it's really
mm-hmm.
famous, and I've been listening a lot to them, and always enjoy their episodes.
I actually didn't know that one. It's one I will follow
Yeah, you
after the
should put on
episode.
your list.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about your pick of the month? Tell us.
Yeah. So the one I would like to start with is one from Mel Robbins that went out around mid-May. It's called Live a Healthier, Happier, and Longer Life: The Secrets of Feeling Young Forever. And it's actually an interview with her 86-year-old mother in law. So it was a great episode because it was, like kind of family speaking to each other, like family members speaking to each other. And I really feel that we don't see a lot in media old people enjoying their life. I mean, like saying old, I mean, maybe people that are over 70 and really just having a great life. I feel that we always put forward people that are 20, 30, even less than 20 now. And then it seems that, okay, then you grow older and you just watch the television and you stay at home and you don't have friends. And this is really something that I would like to avoid for myself. So I really enjoyed this episode. So to give you a small recap on the topics that were mentioned there, they spoke about her physical routine. So she actually walks every day and does a little bit of yoga. About her social routine. She really cares about the people she's meeting. She really is proactive in meeting people with whom she feels good to stay active, to have an active life, but on all the aspects you can have in life. She also goes on adventure, and this actually we can. I will make you listen to the a small trailer I have where she speaks about it. She also have a very positive mindset, and she's also into action, action, action. Meaning, if something happens, she will try to take action and go for it or try new experiences, and it's super inspirational for me to listen to that kind of things. So I would suggest to listen to a piece of the podcast just so that you can understand a little bit.
You just have to make yourself be around other people. You can't stay home and feel sorry for yourself because nobody else is feeling sorry for you.
Can you tell us a little bit about why, especially after Ken died, you started spending your winters in Cambodia and volunteering there?
Well, I went there on a bike trip.
Yeah, but this is where it gets interesting.
This was just a small part, just to give you a bit the spirit of how the conversation goes. And if you want to understand why she went to Cambodia and what she has done there, to listen to the podcast. But yeah, really a great episode, really like a feel-good episode that I really enjoyed. Well, Mel Robbins, we already spoke about many of her podcasts, but this one was different because it's not a discussion with someone related to their work and how experts they are in their field, but this is more kind of just a person from her like sharing her everyday life. So this is really like kind of a person I would like to become when I'm her age. And this is why it really like touched me. I was thinking about this episode for weeks after I listened to it. So I was wanted to check with you. Do you feel that we don't see many models like this of all the people enjoying their life?
Mel Robbins is great for this because she does not only tackle elders like she just did, but she also tackles, like we talked about before, hormonal imbalance when women are going through menopause and so on.
Yeah.
She's really into inclusion, and I think I must say I have even more respect for her mother-in-law because my first question was, does her partner still live? And I just understood from the preview that he doesn't.
No.
And I read a research not so long ago that said people who live together for a very long time have more chance of being healthy because they look after each other, you know. So wow, respect for this woman. And I know she's the mother-in-law, but she makes me think of Mel Robbins herself. Because I saw a little bit the character on social media as well, and they actually look alike personality-wise. But yeah, I do think that we need more representation of elders in our society, and especially elders having fun and enjoying their life. It's not because you're over 60 that your life ends. On the contrary, you should have all the time in the world to just do what you love, right?
Yeah, she also mentioned, like, for example, after 70, she has made a tattoo with
No
one
way.
of her,
Okay.
with one of the daughters of Mel. She also went bungee jumping, like, like really crazy stuff. Even like I don't want to do it, I'm so scared. And she
Things
did
that
that,
we don't even
so
do.
crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, really feel good episode. When maybe one day when you feel down, I think it's really something that will put you really in a good mood.
Maybe onto the third one. It's a completely different one this time, and I hope you haven't heard of it. So maybe we can go to the preview, and I'll explain a little bit more after.
Life and you theirs and somebody you can trust.
What a beautiful way to lead us into this essay. Why don't you take it away for us whenever you're ready?
Failing in marriage does not mean failing at marriage, by Joe Blair. Alone one evening in early spring, seated on a green park bench beside the Charles River in Cambridge, Mass., I waited for Deb. The sun was setting and the temperature falling, and I was wearing my softball jersey and knickers and wishing I had remembered to bring my thick flannel shirt.
Thank you. So this podcast, it's called Modern Love. It's actually a podcast based on the New York Times popular series of essays. So it's coming from newspaper being adapted in a podcast, and actually it was a few years ago adapted into a series on Amazon Prime. So it's a huge success, obviously. This podcast is exploring the joys and challenges of love and modern love with readings by personalities and updates from the essayists themselves. So they always invite one famous personality and they make them read the essays they picked from the newspapers, and it's done together with the host Anna Martin. As I said, it was first out of a newspaper, then a podcast, then a Prime series. This time it's Peter Gallagher who's reading the essay he chose. He's an American actor. I didn't know him. And apparently he has played in Law and Order, in Californication, and in Grace and Frankie on Netflix recently. Before reading the essay, the person, so here Gallagher, talks about themselves. So Gallagher here says, I chose this essay because I really relate to this one. So he first talks about his own marriage before reading the essay. He has a marriage of 41 years long, so lots of things to say. And the essay he chose it's called Failing in Marriage Does Not Mean Failing at Marriage, as you heard. And it's an essay about a beautiful love story from a stranger, of course, with big ups and big downs. It's about a couple that fails together, reunites, goes through life together, basically. And in the essay, the author also gives some tips about marriage, his view on relationship, how he met his wife, how he proposed to her in a very clumsy way. Anyway, it's very funny, it's moving, it's emotional, it's quite short actually also. I think the podcast takes about 30 minutes. After the reading, Gallagher, the actor, debriefs with the host about the story he just read. He explains in his own experience of love, about his relationship, how he broke up as well with his wife, also how they got reunited. So there is also always a kind of link. So it's really a glimpse into the personal life of personalities and of strangers as well. So it is a very different kind of podcast. So my question is, do you sometimes listen to stories through podcast, Marie-Elise? And also, does this resonate with you or not at all?
So actually, no. I usually listen to podcasts really related to self-help or business, really more interview-like, or podcasters sharing their experiences. I never listen to stories because I feel like there is so much I want to learn through podcasts that if I listen to stories, I'm losing time during which I could listen to a podcast where I could learn something new, you know? So I do like read stories to just to have a good time. But when it's podcasts, I really listen to them to learn something new, to have like new aspects on life, or really just tips, or also business tips, or like what we are reviewing here, everything related to self-development and everything I could actually learn from. So this is actually a new type of podcast I'm listening through what you explained now.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this existed, where actors are reading an essay, and then, which is nice, I think what you explained is that they also speak about it afterwards. So it's not just reading, but also
Indeed.
sharing a little bit their views and experiences.
Yeah, it's more of a entertainment podcasts. Yeah, sure. But they do share a little bit of tip. They do, like you said, debrief a little bit after. So I do encourage you to check Modern Love, because it might be that there is some famous personality that you know, and this makes it maybe easier to listen to. So give it a try.
Yeah, exactly.
And let me know.
Yeah, indeed. If I think about it, it's 30 minutes. You know, I usually listen to them like in the speed of 1.2, 1.5. So it's even quicker than 30 minutes. Then I have the
Okay.
time to listen to something else. But no, it's good to always listen to something like, which is outside of what you listen to usually.
Okay.
Yeah, super interesting. Then thank you for sharing this one.
You're welcome. What about the last one now?
The last one I wanted to share is one from, I don't know if you know them, Almost 30 Podcast. Have you heard
Oh,
about
yeah.
them? So I would like to share here the one they've made on human design and intuitive decision making. Here I would prefer to start with sharing a piece of the episode.
Human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth that reveals how you are uniquely wired to operate in every area of your life. Whether it's how you build a business, how you work, how you parent, how you cultivate friendships, how you make decisions, it really gives you a roadmap to finding your unique flow. And I feel like so often in life we get stuck because we're trying to emulate how someone else has done things, thinking it's the path for us too. And I think human design is such a permission slip and such a liberating tool to be like, oh, it's different for me.
This was just a piece of the episode where they actually explain what human design is. I've seen that a lot on Instagram, actually. I think there are a lot of coaches who are experts in human design. I was curious about what they will speak about. Now, I know this is something that, Cyril, maybe you are not really attracted to it because it's not very scientific. Like they, so here the human design, basically they give you there are like different types of who we can be and what kind of character we have, and
Mhm.
it's based on your first name, last name, where you are born, and your birth date. So there in the episode they share a website where you can insert this data and to have an answer of who you actually are. So I think even if you don't believe in it, I think it's anyways interesting to listen to the episode because they explain to you the different types of people that are on Earth, and you can see if you feel that you identify to one of them, or just see how we can be different and how some things that we do usually is just part of our personality of how we behave. So I've made the test, and for myself, I'm a manifesting generator. And actually, it was quite true what they said. So I'm a multi-passionate. I do a lot of things. I let things come to me. I trust my gut. I'm naturally independent. I'm a relationship builder. So, but then you can think of, okay, it's very general and maybe
Right.
it
Yeah.
applies to everyone. Yeah, I see you coming. But yeah, so this, like when you, because obviously this is kind of, I would say, the most negative point about this podcast, which I actually enjoy listening to Almost 30 because it's kind of discussion usually between friends. You feel like you're just discussing with friends. Here they invited a human design expert, which is called Erin Claire Jones, but there are plenty of advertisements. Like it starts from
Oh, really?
advertisement. During the episode, you are twice interrupted by two different advertisements for some products. And they also want you to go on the website where you can receive your human design if you use their discount code, So
Mhm.
it's all marketing. They also start the episode actually speaking about motherhood and how knowing the human design of your kid can help you to understand how they might react to some situations.
Mhm.
So in the episode, I was lacking the more scientific basic on where does human design come from? Like who invented it, or is it somewhere like are there statistics about it or something? So there's nothing about that. So no really scientific proof. It's just really exchanges, explanations from them on what human design is. So I think it's a good episode just to understand, to have a first step into this world and see if it's something you feel it might be interesting for you or not. I enjoyed the episode, and I liked all these woo-woo things, so I enjoyed this one. It's kind of when we discuss like the episode of the Diary of a CEO, there is always scientific research. You have always experts, really experts in their field, and you have numbers, etc. And this is something I like there. Anyways, this was a new topic, a new discovery for me, and very enjoyable when you listen to it because it's kind of a really discussion. Just the advertisement is a bit heavy.
I totally understand why you chose this one for the pick of the month because it's very different indeed from what we normally listen to. And for me, this topic is completely new. Never heard of it. So it's great.
Okay, so did you never heard about human design?
Never. Okay. And you do make me curious now. I'm definitely gonna check my type. But like you said, it's a little bit like, I feel like it's a little bit like the horoscope that is applying, that can be applied to anyone, but still I'm curious. And about almost 30, I now remember why I followed them because of the title, almost 30. I'm almost 30.
Yeah, me too.
And I do remember why I unfollowed them. Because they couldn't relate to the topics, and in the end I was never listening to them, so I unsubscribed. I mean, from my app, podcast app. So but I will give it a try. Always interesting to keep an open mind. The Diary of a CEO would probably never do something like this, but we are not going to listen to only one podcast, right? It's nice. Thank you for sharing. And next thing I'm doing after this recording is checking my profile, and then I will let you know.
Yeah, I think what is interesting is to make it and then listen to the podcast, because afterwards they explain all the types, and there you have the explanations, because when you do the test you don't have many explanations there. Indeed, it's kind of horoscope because it's based on your birth date but also birth hour, so this you would need to know on at what hour you have been born and how many minutes. And the place days, I think, is easy, but I guess that not everybody knows their hours. I know my mom shared it with me, so I know it. Yeah, I think it's nice because we have actually selected 4 episodes, but they are very different. Topics are very different, and also the types of how the episode podcast is structured is different. So I really hope that our listeners will enjoy it as much as we do.
Please share with us your thoughts. And those are quite famous ones, so I'm sure that you have listened to at least one of the podcasts. And actually, it's a perfect link with what we are used to do now. Share 3 things we are grateful for. I'm grateful for everything we learned thanks to the podcasts. I've learned thanks to you, and those 4 episodes are so different. There is so much knowledge to gain. And when I listen to podcasts on a daily basis, I learn so much. So that would be the thing I'm grateful for. What about you?
So I decided to share that today I'm super grateful for the weather. We had in Croatia a lot of rain in the past days, and it's really good for the plants and the planet, so I won't complain. But this week is super sunny and the beach days are starting, so I can pass my weekend by the beach. And yeah, super happy for that and super grateful for this.
So that's it for today, for PodCrush of May. Thank you to everyone for listening. We hope that we triggered some desire to listen to those 4 podcasts. If you liked our episode, please let us know. If you have any podcast tips, let us know as well. We might review them in the next episode. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we hope to hear from you very soon.
Yeah, and I also would like to remind you that we are available on social media, so you can follow us on Instagram on the podcast review by C&M. We actually share everyday reviews of the podcast we currently listen to that we don't get the chance to share doing the podcast recording. So if you want to have more ideas on what to listen to on a regular basis, you can follow us there. So thank you for listening and wish you a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.